Hi, my name is Uma Wright, and this is for the class Jesus and His Teachings, Christian um, 3333. Um, Today in this video, I will be talking about the Gospel of Thomas. Um, let's start with a little background. The Gospel of Thomas is famous and infamous at the same time. It's famous because um, it's famous to some because was it's considered writings from one of the original people who was around when Jesus actually walked in the flesh. Uh, it's an eyewitness account to the sayings and to some of his sayings and some of the stories, his parables, and some of the meanings that go along with what Jesus said, what is known in our Gospels, in our four Gospels today, here in 2020. Um, it has been called a direct and almost a teaching of uh, Jesus' teaching. But as you know, in the Bible days, as I call them, when Jesus walked the earth, a lot of that wasn't written. It was passed down oral traditions. They had scribes that wrote down what was taught as the apostles went about teaching. And so you get to thinking about is these scribes' creativity, how they interpreted the Word of God. Um, was it actually um, edited and looked at by the apostles when they went about talking or when they went about preaching? But most of all, we have to rely on the oral part of it, meaning stories passed down, kind of like the Native Americans that we have today, where in their culture the stories are passed down from one generation to the next so that they don't be lost. And of course, there's interpretations um, of the storyteller that are put off in it as because everyone understands differently. No two people understand the same thing, and our gospels are also a big credit to it today because we have some of the same sayings in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. But then also there are some differences, the wordings are differences because the audience is different, whether we're talking to the Greeks, whether we're talking to the Hebrews, whether we're talking to the Jewish, whether we the Jewish people at the time, the Hebrews, the Israel, it just all depends upon who you're talking to, is how you approach a subject. The Apostle Paul is very famous for that, for making the gospel common to what the people's um, ideology and their speech was at the time. He related the gospel to their everyday lives. So my life and their life may be two different things. Um, So that is what the Gospel of Thomas represents. The Gospel of Thomas was found in 1945 in Egypt, and I'm not about to pronounce the city's name because I don't want to disrespect anybody from that culture. But the story was eventually traced by a young American scholar of the New Testament and early Christianity, Professor James Robinson, in 1975 when he personally led uh, a uh, when he personally followed up a lead recorded in Arabic in one of the logs of the Coptic Museum in Cairo. Um, so I have to go step back with that. So the um, the scroll was these books were actually found by a peasant, Muhammad Ali, and no, not Cassius Clay in our time, but Muhammad Ali, uh, looking for fuel, and he was digging, and he found these um, jars, and that were covered, and like people of his time who we some people call it superstition, some people call it religion. You just didn't open up that because you didn't want evil spirits to release, because it was known in that culture that some jars contained evil spirits or were thought to contain um, evil spirits. But needing money, he went ahead on and he opened up these jars, and bits of the paper flew open and all these manuscripts were in there. So I'm thinking it had to be a pretty large jar and not like that. So he brought these home and um, to his family, and they kept it hidden for fear that someone in authority would come and take it from them. So eventually, it was taken from them, and the it was sold on the black market to various wealthy people who had this um, book, not realizing the value, because it had value then and it didn't really have the value in that country, in that particular location at that time. And so the um, it was eventually, the government eventually stepped in, got a hold of it, and they put it all into the a museum in Cairo. Uh, so that's where it rested. And so our Professor Robinson saw this lead in Arabic about these books, and uh, so they went over there and they immediately started trying to, um, after getting the necessary permission that they needed, went over there and started immediately looking at it to see if it was authentic. Number one, was it authentic? Number two, was it even real? Um, Number three, was it even worth looking? Was it the great, number five, was it the great find of the century? And really, really, in when you put it in today's context, it really is, because not many writings have lasted throughout history of finding. I mean, the latest find for us is the Dead Sea Scrolls, uh, uh, written by the scribes of John, for John the Baptist. So um, this was a great find, considering that he was one of the apostles that was around, and you're getting a, okay, this is what was said, this is what was written, this is what was said. Um, and then you also have to look at the oral traditions. Everything was passed down by word of mouth, very much like our Native American culture here in the United States. Everything is passed down from generation to generation, and it wasn't written. And so to have something in writing, they immediately went to go take a look at it and try to see its authenticity, see if there was anything new that could be taught, see if there was anything. And of course, it met with opposition as time has gone in and people have looked into it. Um, they referred to this as, they eventually, it was not included in the gospel. It was thought for a long time it should be the fifth gospel. And it was just later turned into the Gnostics, and what they believe is that humans are divine souls trapped in physical bodies, trapped in this physical world, the material world. And they say that the world was made by an imperfect spirit, and that imperfect spirit is thought to be the same as the God of Abraham. So that's the a little bit about the history and this belief. But because we don't have the whole story with the Gospel of Thomas, because there's a lot that's missing, um, we don't count it. They're trying to. It's still, excuse me, it's still debated today whether it's considered Vatican Gnosticism, or uh, is it considered uh, or in other words, other religions, have they just thrown it out because it's saying something that's not going on with what's relevant today when the books were um, written back then. So I just thought it was interesting, some of the uh, things that was said, like these are some sayings that the Gospel of Thomas said, that Jesus said, "Whoever finds the world and becomes rich, let him renounce the world," which just seems like it's, how can you be rich and then renounce the world? But the Gospels today consider a rich man to be someone who has found Jesus and have realized that everything belongs to him, where in the material world that means to give up houses, land, and things like that. And that's not what we're taught today. So that's a part of the debate. And then some other things that is said on here, that Simon Peter said to him, "Let Simon Peter said to him, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life." And then Jesus said, "I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit, resembling you males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven," which would be a great debate topic. I think if I had the more time, but in essence, I don't look at it as saying that I had to become a physical man. No, we have to remember the time period during that time that males dominated the world. Women didn't have rights. Women weren't thought of as human beings. They were just there to procreate and keep the house and keep the children, and to listen, and whatever man said must be done. Um, it would surely not make it today, but there are some people that still believe it. So these are some things that are considered controversial um, for the Gospel of Thomas, but I'm out of time. I'm over my time. Um, but it's some great reading, and if you ever get a chance to it, you should take a look at the Gospel of Thomas. I think it has some interesting things to say, and I look forward to studying more about it. Thank you.